They didn't care about what I was saying. I'm not that excited to be here. It's the first day back from winter break. Students are starting to rush in and I'm feeling very nervous because we haven't planned anything for this week. During my last observation, it was the worst observation I had because students were standing up from their desk and maybe my teaching wasn't like scaffolded enough for them to understand it. So there was a lot more behaviors. A suggestion that I got was to create a class chart with the students to see how they learn best, what that might look like, what that might sound like, so that I can refer to it during my lessons if there's chaos in the room. So coming back from vacation, today was pretty much the perfect opportunity to do that. Even though I wasn't ready to teach anything too, I'm taking over math officially, and we went over non-numeric patterns. One of them was a stamp pattern, so cat, cat, monkey, and I let them come up and stamp it themselves. And another one was doing this and figuring out like what the next one would be and figuring out the two rules. So it goes from blue, red, and then another one was increasing by 1. And I also did erasers. So far, so good though. Oh, I also forgot, another student came in and gave the best teacher bracelet. Honestly, I was very nervous in the beginning and my heart was pumping, even though the teaching was pretty easy. I heard that when students come back from winter break, it's like the first day of school again because you have to go over the expectations. And the response you get out of the students is so unpredictable. Because I'm more comfortable with these students and in this class now, it's a lot easier for me to be strict with the rules and what I expect. For example, when they're at the carpet with their whiteboards, a lot of them like to draw, but now I can easily just be like, markers should be capped. I might still get a student who rolls their eyes, but consistency is key. And if I get a little bit of attitude, so be it. There were a lot of moments when we had to go back and say like, look, your peer said that they can only learn when it's a quiet space. And for a couple minutes that would work, and then another problem would pop up. Then it was referring back to the chart again saying, look, your other peer said this and that. I'm also back on behavior tracking for one of my students who is making noises in class or singing in class. There are a few of them who are being argumentative. For example, there was one student who was putting a tag in front of his mouth and sucking it so that he can make other people laugh. I asked him to throw it away and his response was, why? I'm not hurting anybody with it. So I just closed my proximity to him and then he got up and threw it away. Another situation that we were dealing with a lot today was that there's these two guys who have been very buddy-buddy with each other. And I love that their friendship is growing, but it's the two guys in our class who struggle so much with getting work completed. One of them would always move to the carpet just so that he can sit next to the other guy who's in the corner of the desk, so we're probably going to move his seat. And the saddest part of my day was that my mushroom cup broke. This is the cup that my host teacher gave me the first day of student teaching, and I've been using it to hold my pens and pencils and the flowers that students would always give me. What happened is that a student dropped his marker cap, tried to bend down, but he put his weight on my table and it just slid down and broke. He felt so bad, and I'm not even mad, I'm just sad because this meant a lot to me. And now I don't have a little place to put my pens and pencils. Look what survived. The red part. Let's hope he doesn't knock it down again. I feel like I'm going to run this place dry of posters. It took me a whole hour to set up materials for my observation. I pretty much take problems from the TM, but I replace the name with a student's name, so I leave it blank, just so that it gets them a little more engaged with the work. Today was such a tiring day. I taught a math lesson on numeric patterns and I let the students choose where they wanted to sit on the carpet, and a big chunk of them made very bad decisions. Even the students who are usually on task were the ones that were having side conversations. I like to have students bring their whiteboard supplies to the carpet while we're doing a math lesson so that I can kind of check in on who's getting it and who's not. But this class has a really difficult time with using tools for learning. Something as simple as a whiteboard marker becomes a toy for them. I would catch a lot of them just drawing on the whiteboards or coloring on it, and I'm very clear and quick to address those things, but it just keeps happening. During recess, my host teacher created a seating chart for the carpet space, and when the kids came back from recess, We had this very long discussion of expectations, making better choices, and taking ownership of their learning. I pretty much told them, like, in life, you're constantly going to be learning something, whether it's academic or whether it's a life lesson, and the only person that can stop them from growing is themselves. Telling them they have the power to decide how they learn, and reminding them to be intentional with how they live life. We also talked about what it means to participate in a lesson, and I admitted to them that growing up in school, I wasn't the smartest kid, but it always helped me to learn from other people and hear other people's thoughts, and that the most important thing about learning is that you're able to try. They were a lot more responsive after that conversation, especially because I was giving very hard eye contact with those of them that I noticed during my math lesson, and they had those guilty eyes. Other than that, I sat in on a small group on text structures, and 90% of the students that were in that group were so amazing. After school, it was just a lot more prepping. I might do my observation tomorrow. Because we had that discussion on whiteboard supplies and being engaged in your learning and just sitting at the carpet and doing your work. I'm hoping that they'll remember what we talked about today when I do my observation. My brain is so slow this morning, but I'm currently prepping for my observation. I decided to do it today just so that I can piggyback off of what we were talking about yesterday as the group. I'm currently just covering parts of the problem so that we can work on it step by step, and that usually helps them with not feeling so overwhelmed with everything. Yay, my lesson went really well. I had to have that conversation of making good choices again because in the morning they were pretty rowdy. Like during morning meeting, one of the students got really frustrated and shoved another kid, and some of them were making comments like anger issues, and so it just kept bouncing back and forth, and I was really scared for how this observation would turn out. But I think it's because I scaffolded it enough. They were getting it. I had very good participation from everyone, so I'm super relieved. And it was so funny because we didn't have enough time during morning meeting to play 2 games of Heads Up 7 Up, so I told them, if you guys do well during my lesson, we'll play before recess. And when it was time to play again, a lot of them were like, no, we want to continue math, because they were working on the independent practice. And I don't know, maybe they have fun with sequences, but they didn't do that yesterday when we were working on patterns. This is how it all ended up, and my mess on the floor. Another thing that I noticed is that I was a lot more consistent with using academic language, so using sequence, rule, term, and the kids were a little confused at first, but slowly they started to like develop that in their vocabulary and also using it when they were doing think, pair, share. And by the end of the lesson, they were very quick to know like what I was asking for when I asked for like the 5th term, the 15th term. I was looking forward to my figurative language lesson because we're going to go over different types of figurative language and have them write an example and draw a picture of them. But there was this table that was absolutely horrendous. All they had to do when we were starting was just to glue 4 pages into their notebooks, and it took a really long time because they were talking, some of them were on the floor. It was so weird because it's not their typical behavior, but that entire table has just been very off this week. It was really sad because everyone else was ready to learn. We started similes. We only went over the definition, and it was that same table that would ruin the entire flow of my lesson. It was just a very long day. I tried to go over the conversation about making better choices again because one of the students within that table was absent, but even while I was having that serious discussion, he would just argue about things, and the body language showed that they didn't care about what I was saying. So it was a big slap in the face for me. We're going to move their seats tomorrow, probably rearrange the desks to see how they are. This week they're just so emotionally dysregulated, and it's not even all of them. I would say for the most part 80% of the students were amazing today. It's just really hard when one student or a couple students disrupt the entire flow of everyone's learning. My host teacher and I sometimes talk about it, how teaching is like a stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, because behaviors take up so much space. I'm honestly super grateful for a lot of them though. It was just not a good day. During that conversation, one of my students, who's super duper sweet and super empathetic, was writing on her whiteboard and said, sorry we are like this. and you can visibly tell that she was very upset with how the other students were acting too. On the bright side, what's really keeping me together today is that my observation lesson went well, and I don't need to worry about another one until 2 weeks later. We're starting Winn-Dixie next week, and that's what my next 2 observations will be about. I get an entire week to see how they feel about it, and hopefully they like it enough to be engaged with it during my observation lessons too, because that's what I worry about the most. I also understand that it's the first week back from winter break, and it's really hard to get back into the groove of things. Even as a teacher, it's really hard to be on a schedule again. So I'm trying my best to learn to be patient with it, and I'm expecting it to last another full week. I don't want student teaching to sound like a horror story, because there are a lot of very special moments that I hold near and dear to my heart. One of the reasons why I record all this is because I want to remember them. So one funny positive thing that happened today was that there are these group of girls who are trying to figure out what my favorite candy is, what my favorite chips are, what my favorite boba is, and they keep giving each other looks, and when I look at them, they're like, oh, we're not doing anything, and I joke around with them. I'm like, suspicious. This is my 10th week of student teaching, and today is the first day where I'm not that excited to be here. We're going to do a meltdown experiment for science today, so I gotta shove all the ice in here. This is our science experiment today. We're going to put ice inside of it and use it as insulation, and the students are going to predict which one will melt the fastest and test that in the sun. 2 out of the 5 students that were having a rough time yesterday are doing a lot better today. The other 3 are still resisting to do work, but it's not as distracting as it was yesterday. So far it's manageable. They're out at recess right now, so we'll see how they are when they come in. Usually when they come in after recess, it does get wild. Figurative language went so much better today. They really enjoyed it and they had a lot of fun. We went over simile, metaphor, hyperbole, idiom, and alliteration. They got to write an example and draw it out. I think their favorite was alliteration because we did it as a whole class, and I told them to choose a noun, a verb, and a noun. One of them even asked if we can turn it into a morning meeting game. Everyone would create a sentence using alliteration, and we would choose a letter within the alphabet for them to create. So I thought that was a really good idea. When we were going over hyperboles, I actually looked it up, like hyperbole examples on Google, and we looked through it. And I asked my host teacher to explain one of them. It was something like, she's as old as the hills. And I made a comment saying not to call you elderly or anything, because one time one of the students said that my teacher had elderly eyes. So we always say elderly in the class just to mess with him, and the kid was responding like, wow, that's even worse than mine. Science was okay. We brought the students out so that we can put everything under the sun. The instructions said to let it sit for 10 minutes under the sun, but afterwards they only had like droplets of water, not even droplets, 1 droplet. So we're going to try it again tomorrow and place it out for like 30 minutes to 40 minutes, and then measure it as a whole class and talk about it as a whole class instead of doing individual ones. After finishing our figurative language lesson, we're going to be teaching point of view, and my teacher showed me some really cute books. The day the crayons quit and the day the crayons came home, and I've heard a lot of teachers use this whenever students were misusing crayons. Look how cute it is. Like, it's so funny, and look.
I have a good idea. Get in!
Since we have a math benchmark soon, we did this Pokemon review battle that I bought from the Perfect Pencil on Instagram. The students got to choose 4 masters to battle, and you basically get to interact with it, click their face, choose a Pokeball, and then you battle them on the paper, show their work, go back, keep battling more, and even though some of the problems were really hard for them, they were super engaged with it, and one of them even asked us to continue it afterwards and to do it for their own fun Friday. It's actually crazy how much their engagement changes when you move like problems on a worksheet to something like this, and I love to do these sorts of stuff, but I don't know how it would be possible to create this for every single lesson. So I am so thankful that there are so many creative teachers out there who are willing to share their stuff, because there's no way I'd be able to create this on my own or have the time to. Like it.
Oh, that's perfect.
Like a game.